know that that is a real sore spot of mine. I used to be an evolutionist prior to being a Christian, and when I found out that what I had believed in was based on absolutely nothing, it was quite a shock.
You were quoting Lecontenue, who is a Nobel Prize winner. In 1947, he wrote a book, Human Destiny, and he said that the probability of the chance formation of a single protein molecule in a volume of matter equal to the volume of the Earth was 10 to the 243rd power, millions of years. And you had that exactly right. Few people know that. I've got 5 points that I would like to cover. First of all, I believe evolution is a pseudoscientific farce. It has no basis in fact at all, that it contradicts, violates every scientific principle it encounters, and it represented blind-minded prejudice against the truth built on pride and the assumption that man can answer everything. And there are enormous volumes of books that have been written about it. The bookstores are full of them, and many careers have been built, and billions of dollars have been spent to prove that Adam was an ape, and they haven't done it.
Well, again, I guess the humorous phrase that I like to best apply towards evolution is nothing more than science trying to make a monkey out of man.
Perfect. Let's for a minute, I'd like to show you, I have a college text here on philosophy, Introduction to Philosophy, and it presents what a madman is. And it's calling the parallel of a madman and a philosopher. And he presents the case, some philosophers don't believe in material things, said a fellow who was just getting into philosophy, and now I'm not sure that I do. And his friend said, taking hold of a table, "You don't believe there's a table here? You're mad." Well, actually, this is the point. Believing in something that isn't there and not believing something that is there, that represents the mindset of the evolutionist. I have a book, The Universe Explained. It was published in 1994 by Colin Ronin. It's a very nice, colorful expression of the various processes that our scientific people have learned about the universe, some of which is absolutely true and others imaginary. But everybody believes in the Big Bang, right?
That seems to be the general accepted theorem.
Well, here we go on the chapter in the Big Bang, the missing mass. The quest is on to learn the fate of the universe and discover why much of its mass seems to be lost. There is barely 1% of the mass that the universe should contain according to the Big Bang theory. Thus, there must be a vast amount of dark matter that we simply can't see. In other words, they believe in something they can't see. What do you call it when you believe in something you can't see and there's no evidence for?
Well, you're talking faith.
How about a religion?
Well, yeah, no,
okay.
Definitely.
Now here it says, some believe that dark matter lurks in huge voids between galactic superclusters. Others hold that mass exists in forms of matter unlike any yet discovered. So the hunt is on for new particles lurking in deep space. Falderall. Okay, now, the book, The Ascent of Science, touches on this, and it's discussing the Big Bang. It says, it is not wise to ask what became before the Big Bang in scientific circles. It's even regarded as gauche, a sign of scientific naivete. If you wish to avoid the image of the cosmic country bumpkin, you must profess to believe in the current mythology. Now, this book is written by a man who's fully convinced that evolution and the scientific agenda is accurate, but he calls it a mythology, and he's exactly true. So here we start with the origin of the universe. The doctrine is that it began with the explosion of a subminiature particle that instantaneously produced all the matter in the universe and expanded and for 15 billion years till here we are. The effect of that is that matter made mind. Now we are accustomed to using our minds to create things, but you're talking about from goo to you by way of the zoo. Barnyard beginning. Okay, so what we've established by their own admissions is that the Big Bang is missing 99% of the matter in the universe required to support the requirements of the theory. Therefore, it becomes a religion. Now, this is very comfortable for people who are indoctrinated of that manner. I have another book. This is more specifically on our subject by Michael Denton, and I'd like everyone to know about this book. He is a microbiologist and an evolutionist. And the name of his book, Michael Denton's book, is Evolution, A Theory in Crisis. In the last chapter, he says, no case has ever been observed of the inheritance of acquired characteristics. The next sentence is, Darwinism remains, therefore, the only truly scientific theory of evolution. He just said, there's never been a single demonstration of the theory, yet it's the only scientific theory. I think we're talking about madmen here. He goes on to say, there are many biological phenomena, particularly in the field of embryology and morphogenesis, which have not been explained with modern biochemical and physiological concepts. And he says, consequently, biologists wishing to operate within a scientific framework, even those who are only too well the seriousness of the problems, have no alternative at present but to subscribe to the Darwinian worldview. The whole book is full of evidence why evolution cannot be true. He's very candid, and he's a microbiologist who speaks plainly. But then he says, I believe it anyway. And so that's belief in spite of the evidence. You were correct when you said there's not a single hypothesis, there's not a single basis of evidence that demonstrates that evolution is correct. And worst of all, I've got Origin in the Species, and Darwin presented, as he should have, the objections to this theory. And the facts are that evolution says that there should be 4 billion years of fossils, because evolution's been going on for 4 billion years. So they say, we'll use their numbers. They have found single-celled fossils, which they date back to almost 3 billion years. But the first metazoa, which are complex fossils with more than one cell, appeared in the Cambrian strata, which are dated at 543 million years ago. A very precise figure that there was a full-page article about this, or the front-page article in Time magazine. And what you find in the Cambrian strata are not very simple materials and critters, but almost all the major groups, thousands and thousands of fully formed, discrete species, some of them 20 feet long, look like a unicorn's horns. The major group were the trilobites. Trilobites, I've got some on my desk here, and they're about a foot long, maybe 5 or 10 inches wide, down to little miniature things. And there were many species of them. I have a book of 86 different species of Cambrian, or they're not Cambrian, but Ordovician trilobites. They have no ancestors. They appeared suddenly, abruptly, with no ancestors at all, and that's after 80% of the time had passed. Not 80%, like 87% of the 4 billion years had passed.
Don, are you sure they didn't have ancestors? Because I can see some certain genealogical characteristics between trilobites and politicians. Are you positive on that?
They may have had descendants. Well said. All right, so this becomes the great problem, and Darwin himself admitted it in 1859. He says, of the sudden appearance of groups of allied species in the lowest known fossiliferous strata, that means the lowest strata which had fossils, it cannot be doubted that all the Cambrian and Silurian trilobites are descended from some one crustacean, if our theory be true. To the question why we do not find rich fossiliferous deposits belonging to the assumed earliest periods prior to the Cambrian system, I can give no satisfactory answer. That was in 1859. And they've been looking for those little bugs now for 141 years and haven't found one. So what does that say? The evidence shows abrupt introduction of life. That means creation in the time when the Cambrian rocks were laid down, regardless of how old they are.
Yeah, kind of spontaneous appearance kind of takes the heat right out of evolution, doesn't it?
Yeah, but they know this, but they ignore it. It's like that problem with where's the missing matter for the Big Bang. Well, it's only 99% of it's gone. We'll find it sometime. They don't care. It's insanity. It's not science. It's pure speculation of a madman. It has no basis in reality. Now, there was a fellow who won the Nobel Prize, Le Condinoy, and you quoted him. He studied with Pierre and Madame Curie. And this man was a genius, super genius. He invented many pieces of equipment, medical machines that are still used in medical practice today. He was a very balanced person. He wrote 2 plays. And a year or so before he died, he wrote Human Destiny. This was 1947. Here's a man who was the first human to apply a mathematical principle to a biological problem when he developed a formula for how long it would take a wound to heal. That was the very first one. He was a biologist and a mathematician. Here's what he says in Human Destiny. In brief, each group, order, or family seems to be born suddenly, and we hardly ever find the forms which link them to the preceding strain. And when we discover them, they are already completely differentiated. Not only do we find practically no transitional forms, but in general, it is impossible to authentically connect a new group with an ancient one. And then he says about birds, they have the quality of homoeothermism, which is automatic temperature control. They're not like reptiles. And the doctrine is the birds came from reptiles, and all those little canaries flying around are really modified dinosaurs. Try and sound like somebody made that up at a bar when he had too much to drink. Here's what he says about it. The same holds true for the appearance of homoeothermism, constant temperature, in birds. This is an immense and unquestionable liberation from the servitude to the environment, and has, it must be admitted, all the unsatisfactory characteristics of absolute creation. In other words, the evidence says creation. He continues, whereas we feel such cannot be the case. This stands out today as one of the greatest puzzles of evolution. So the facts don't support his theory, but he goes with his feelings.
Now that's kind of interesting, because I didn't know you could have a puzzle without any pieces.
You got it. Have you seen the Life series of books? They are always publishing articles, and they've had a series in the Nature Library, and then another series just about evolution, starting with the missing link, and they'd give it to you to read, and if you kept it, well, they'd send you some more. There's a chart which has appeared in many classrooms. Well, this is, again, Le Condinoy, the Nobel Prize winner, biological mathematician, and he said, to study the most interesting phenomena, namely life and eventually man, we are therefore forced to call on an anti-chance, as Eddington, who was the president of the British Society of Scientific Society, as Eddington called it, a cheater who systematically violates the laws of large numbers, the statistical laws, which deny any individuality to the particles considered. So you have to cheat to do it, and they admit it, but they like cheating. So then the question is, why is it so popular? Well, it performs a great service. You realize if you believe in evolution, that means that you don't have any responsibility for your actions because you're just a naked ape anyway, right? And your daddy was an animal, so you get to act like a beast. And one of Darwin's associates was Thomas Huxley. His son, Aldous Huxley, wrote Brave New World. It was a bestseller and was read in a lot of college classes. And
pretty
in
much
June of
required reading in a lot of
1966
high schools now, too.
What'd you say?
Pretty much required reading in a lot of high schools now, too.
Okay. Well, I've been out of high school a while, so I'm glad to know that. Here's what he said, and this was in 1966 in June in a publication called Report. He said, I had motives for not wanting the world to have meaning, consequently assumed it had none, and was able without any difficulty to find satisfying reasons for this assumption. For myself, as no doubt for most of my contemporaries, the philosophy of meaninglessness was essentially an instrument of liberation. The liberation we desired was simultaneously liberation from a certain political and economic system and liberation from a certain system of morality. We objected to the morality because it interfered with our sexual freedom. So basically, he said, I'm an evolutionist because I'm horny. And
well, that's no stretch either.
That's exactly. Okay, so that means we have a report from the Atlanta Constitution today. It's on the editorial page. Internet class is sure to beat a naked dorm. And this girl goes to college, and it's a large university, and she's assigned to a dormitory where clothing is optional, and the guys are running around without any clothes on. And she makes it's a very nice article because she's to the point, Maggie Gallagher. She says, who are we to judge? In lockstep conformity with the rest of your gifted peers, pledge eternal allegiance to the idea that nobody you know has brains enough to make even the simplest of life's judgments, such as, hey, buddy, put your pants on. Well, where did this come from? It came from a complete release from any obligation to recognize sin. And the belief is that man is good and he's improving all the time. We come up this far from the mud puddle and we're going to go on to the stars, and anything we want to do is all right. It's a godless, debasing philosophy. And Hitler liked it because it provided for him the basis for the master race theory. And the full name of Darwin's book was Origin of the Species, the preservation of favored races in the struggle for life. Favored races, that's racism. The Nazis were the favored race. You can see where we're there. Okay, back to the actual evidence. We've got this chart's about 30 inches long, and it represents, this is in the life book Early Man. It was published about a quarter century ago, but the chart still hangs around, and you probably can find it in many classrooms today. It presents a series of animals in a progressive rising from a stoop position to eventually we get to Homo sapiens, us. Now,
so it starts at politician.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. All right. The first one is Pleopithecus, and the definition is a caption under the picture of this little critter. He looks to be about 2 feet high, and one of the earliest proto-apes, Pleopithecus, had the look of a modern gibbon, although its arms were not as disproportionately long. On the basis of its teeth and skull, it is now classed as an ancestor of the gibbon line. I thought this was my family album. What's he doing in my family album? He's a gibbon. And the next one is proconsul, known from, and now what we're doing here is we're covering, 8 million years of the 25 of this whole program. Proconsul, known from numerous fragments adding up to almost complete skeletons, proconsul considered to be a very early ape. He was the ancestor to the apes, and the ancestor of the chimpanzee and perhaps of the gorilla. They did it again. My family album, they got this gorilla in here, and they got this gibbon, and now we get to Dryopithecus. And we've come at this point at 12 million years. That's half the 25 million, right? Dryopithecus, though its skeleton is tantalizingly incomplete, means they didn't have anything, Dryopithecus can be fairly described from a few jaws and teeth. first of the fossil great apes to be discovered. It was widely distributed. Remains have been found throughout Europe. Widely distributed. They found teeth all over the planet. Put them together and they got this monkey. He's got fingernails. He's got hair on his back. The next one is Oreopithecus, a likely side branch on man's family tree. Its teeth and pelvis led scientists to wonder if it could be ancestral to man, but now it's better known that it was clearly an aberrant ape. That's 15 million years. 60% of the evidence, and all we got is monkeys and apes. Now we get to the god ape. Rama, god. Pithecus, ape. The earliest man-like primate found so far, Ramapithecus, is now thought by some experts to be the oldest of man's ancestors in a direct line. Of course, a lot of experts say that's popcorn. His hominid status is predicated upon a few teeth, some fragments of a jaw, and a palate unmistakably human in shape. As 20 million of the 25 million years have gone by. Now, we get Australopithecus, advanced Australopithecus, Australopithecus africanus, Australopithecus, that means southern ape, Francis from afar, and these are go on for the next about 3.5 million years. They're presented in here. We get down to a position of about 1 million years ago. We get early Homo sapiens, Homo erectus, and so forth. Let's stop at that chart right there. Australopithecus has got more positions in this chart than anything else. Yet, Leakey, remember we had Charles Leakey and his son Richard Leakey. These are the premier evolutionists in the world. He says in his book Origins that Australopithecus is very unlikely that our direct and descendants of the Australopithecines, yes, cousins, but descendants, no. So Leakey doesn't believe that Australopithecus belonged to my family tree. And Ashley Montague doesn't either. He wrote a book, Man His First Million Years. He said the skull of all Australopithecines is extremely ape-like. The vault of the skull is low, and some forms a well-developed crest, similar to that of the male gorilla, runs from back to front. Such creatures could not have been ancestral to man. Okay.
Well, I've seen Lord Montague. I can believe he would make that assumption.
But now, today, Thursday, March the 23rd, Land of Constitution, we've got an article here. Study finds knuckle walking linked to humans. And there's two paleoanthropologists, one over in Africa, and I hope they found a good motel. And they found two species of early humans descended from knuckle walkers. And the newly analyzed fossils belong to the hominid class of Australopithecines afarensis, which we just mentioned, and Anamensis. I don't think I said that. Anamensis. That's a new one on me. Okay, so here we have the premier evolutionary expert in the world, who's got his 1470 man, he's pushing, says Australopithecus is junk. So does Ashley Montague. It had a 400 cc brain capacity. We got people in Peachtree Street here in Atlanta that have 4 times that much brain power. And they're still talking about it. And the reason is they don't have anything else to talk about. They don't have anything actual. You could throw all these monkey fossils in a coffin and it wouldn't fill it. And some of them are the assemblies of 400 or 500 pieces found at different layers and different locations. A fellow by the name of Johansen, Donald Johansen. Have you heard of him?
The name is familiar.
He found Lucy.
Okay? Oh, boy, that's where I got.
All right. He found Lucy. Well, he was elated about it and wrote the book, Lucy. It's in my hand here. He was teaching in college. And he presented a problem to his class. The problem was that basically he described a fossil that was much more modern than it should have been because it was found beneath other fossils which were less modern, okay? And he asked the class, what questions would you be most interested in asking about this specimen to help solve the problem passed by his discovery? He says, I would have given an A to anybody who raised the question about his being ancestral. Or I'd have given A to anybody who questioned the date. I'd have given A plus to anyone who went on to say he would like to know more about the skull and how it had been reconstructed. Then he says, nobody had any answers or questions. Students tend to believe what you tell them. That's the whole deal. They're told it and they believe it. They swallow it like a bass takes bait. And they're hooked on a godless, demonic doctrine which debases us as a race and steals our salvation.
Mm. And unfortunately, that's a point well taken, because I always looked at my teachers as kind of being these must be Holy Grail folks. Why else would they teach? I mean, trying to enlighten us with truth. And I had a lot of confidence in my teachers until I got older and more sarcastic.
Well, they're victims also. See, they're run through an indoctrination mill that persuades them that authority stands and that somebody with letters behind their names tells them anything, they're going to buy it. And that they integrate that as young people. They don't have any exposure to the opposite creation or the evidence for that this is all popcorn. It's not presented in the universities. So they make up a story, they tell them a lie, and they believe it and pass it on to our kids. And our kids then feel liberated and begin to experiment in all the things that they're not supposed to, and get depressed and commit suicide or get violent, do murders and use drugs, and etc. The degradation of our society is directly related to this animalistic philosophy.
I think it's pretty much a given. Everybody's searching for God, and when there is no historic God, then you just make your own up.
Yes. Well said. Precisely. The question is asked, why do they believe it? They believe it because that's all they hear. Here's a guy who was actually an instructor, a science professor of biology. He said the thing which repeatedly won them over to acceptance of the theory was the sheer weight of authority on the part of the scientists, though through a not always highly refined method of browbeating. All too frequently, if the young candidate was to keep pace with more seasoned scientists, he was obliged to accept the evolution theory. So what happens is they bombard us all the time. And there's a great industry in publishing the books about this stuff. Do you realize if you went home tonight and got started on it, you could write a book, and if it was outlandish enough, you can find a bone in your backyard, and you might get famous. You ever hear the Nebraska Man?
Yes, I have. Now, in regard to Lucy, that was the one that got me. I mean, I thought, oh my goodness, they finally found it, and that whole story, in and of itself, is like that is the type of science they're using, and it's about as scientific as flipping a coin to make a life or death decision. Because what they were trying to do was they were trying to give life to something dead, or actually never living, and that is evolution, and they were trying to kill God.
Precisely, Bill. Absolutely. You say it so well. I want you to notice that the reason Lucy was accepted and everybody thought it was such a big deal was because it had a knee joint, which indicated that it walked upright. And he was absolutely hysterical when he found a knee joint. He was super elated. I found a knee joint. And he says it in his book. And he goes on for about a page about how joyous he was in finding this knee joint. The knee joint proved that this little critter walked upright. Well, now we got the article in the Constitution today that now that isn't the way it was. The Australopithecines were knuckle walkers.
Of course.
Evolution backwards. Devolution, you said. Devolution, right?
Yeah. Well, now, of course, they didn't happen to mention in the article, did they, that the skull for Lucy was found a considerable distance away from the rest of the body. Well, actually, the body parts.
You're telling secrets now.
Oh, okay.
You don't want to tell that now.
Am I jumping ahead?
No. It just embarrassed them. You're embarrassing them.
Well, and that is the thing, because they found a child's skull among a group of skulls, correct me if I'm wrong, of other children. They decided this was the head of Lucy.
Well, and not in this case. Let me not take a position on that. Tell you what, this is the only book of all those I'm reading where the first 100 pages are gone, 120 to 38. And I've used it so much, I wore it out, and it fell out, and I had to buy another one. But he goes through how we discovered them. Hey, would you like to worship the machine?
Well, not
Wouldn't
particularly.
That be nice?
I was going to say, not particularly myself.
Have you heard of the anthropic principle? It's
yes.
good to read from the book of Romans.
Okay.
And the first chapter describes this darkness. It says, "For the wrath of God is revealed from heaven against all ungodliness and unrighteousness of men who hinder the truth in unrighteousness, because what is known of God is manifest in them, for God manifested it to them. For the invisible things of him, since the creation of the world, are clearly seen, being perceived through the things that are made, even his everlasting power and divinity, that they may be without excuse. Because of that, knowing God, they glorified him not as God, neither gave thanks, but became vain in their reasonings, and with their senseless heart was darkened. Professing themselves to be wise, they became fools, and changed the glory of the incorruptible God for the likeness of an image of corruptible man, and of birds, and of four-footed beasts, and creeping things." That's evolution. Now, let's talk a little bit about the microbiology. The idea is presented that Earth's early atmosphere was like that of the larger planets, the gas planets, Saturn, Uranus, Jupiter, and those gases in those atmospheres are methane, ammonia, carbon dioxide, and they're anoxygenic.
Mm-hmm.
No free oxygen there. So this idea is that Earth's early atmosphere was like that of the gas planets, and that the solar radiation, cosmic rays impinging on the atmosphere produced amino acids, which are synthesized by the energy supplied by these high energy particles from the sun, and that these amino acids, which are the constituents of proteins, precipitated into the sea. And so they fell into the ocean, and the ocean gradually accumulated them, and you had a vast primordial biotic soup. It's called the prebiotic soup. Okay? Then now you have all these amino acids, and it takes 20 of them for the human protoplasm, and they're like letters on an alphabet. And their amino acid is from 11 to, I think it's 22 different atoms in its composition. And that these were drawn out on the shoulders of volcanoes into pools there, and at a temperature of 175 degrees or so, they began to join together or polymerize. And when amino acids join together, that's called, they become polypeptides. And polypeptides chains become proteins. So all this happens spontaneously from the solar radiation, the large gas planet atmosphere, and hot pools on the shoulders of volcanoes. Of course, the moon came in there to draw them up there with the tide. So there was a fellow named Stanley Miller in 1952 who was working under Harold C. Urey at the University of Chicago, who was his instructor. And these guys got the Nobel Prize because what they did was take an atmosphere like that and put it in a flask and pass a constant 60,000 volt spark through it. And at the end of a week, they drew off the reaction products into another container as they were formed. At the end of a week, they analyzed them. They had an impressive list of carbon-containing compounds plus 4 amino acids.
This was it.
Eureka. Don Martini kind of putting a stake in the heart of that vampiric theory of evolution. We'll be right back. There seems to be a new theory that's roundabout there, and would this be something we would be talking about later according to the course of what you wanted to follow, which would be theistic evolution?
Yes, I want to get to that.
Okay, so then I just kind of blew the lid on that one. Excuse me while I break out my St. Jude's belt. That's a joke, friends. I'm not Catholic. But, you know, it's disturbing how many, first of all, there's some organizations out there that claim to be pro-creation research and stuff like that really have left quite a few gaps out there. And there's a lot of churches that have, or a lot of churchosity out there where people have said, well, listen, God's God of the universe. He could have created evolution too. And it's like we want to make a concession to get accepted by the world. Folks, that's one area, again, where there can be, most areas there shouldn't be any compromise when you're talking about holy, immutable, and irrefutable principles. In other areas, you might say, well, we can give a little and take a little, but if you give any on that one, they're taking everything because, again, if you play the game, well, yeah, I guess God could be the God of evolution too. There's nothing to support evolution. You
That's
show not only, it's not just that now we're showing, it's a compounding of idiocy. First of all, there is no evolution, and then you're going to say that your God, who is a God of the ultimate supreme logic, is going to be the creator of chaos and a theory that doesn't even exist. I mean, that sort of nonsense really fries me, Don.
Well, we're doing a room addition to our house, and I went out in the backyard. I built a bird house, then I built a dog house, then I built a little shack, and it just kept growing, and now I got a room addition.
Oh, my goodness, it's evolution. I saw where you were going.
What you have identified is it's a compromise for the purpose of acceptance. And you're being accepted by the wrong crowd because they are avowed enemies of the concept of God and of his hand in his universe.
Well, it's kind of interesting that basically, folks, if you love Christ, you're going to have enmity with the world. And yet, we don't want to have that. We want everybody to like us, and can't we all just get along? I mean, you know, I'm tired of this nonsense theosophy because, you know, friends, we're not supposed to go out and try and create hatred. But the world is going to hate you for your love of Christ, so get over it.
He said that. John, in chapter 18, he said, my kingdom is not of this world. If my kingdom were of this world, then would my servants fight that I should not be delivered to the Jews. But now my kingdom is not from this sense. Back in chapter 15, or in 16, he said, the hour is coming that whosoever killeth you shall think that he has offered a service to God. And 15:18, he said, if the world hates you, know it hated me before it hated you. If you were of the world would love its own. Because you're not of the world, but chose you out of the world, therefore the world hates you. But that doesn't mean Christians should hate back.
Correct. Anyways,
so you're exactly on target there. It's not a popularity contest. If you try and win it, you'll lose.
Yeah, and
prebiotic soup, and I'll wrap this up as quick as I can on that. Now, you've noticed the books I've been reading are not written by people that believe in creation. I've got about 40 books on my desk here, and all but maybe one or two written from the evolutionary, meaningless barnyard beginnings point of view. Okay, so now we have Michael Denton, a microbiologist, who's talking about the prebiotic soup that everybody believes in. He said the existence of prebiotic soup is crucial to the whole scheme. Without an abiotic accumulation of the building blocks of the cell, no life could evolve. Then he says, on so many occasions, here as on so many occasions, paleontology has again failed to substantiate evolutionary presumptions. Considering the way the prebiotic soup is referred to in so many discussions of the origin of life, it is an already established reality. However, it comes as something of a shock to realize there is absolutely no positive evidence for its existence. Now, why would there not be a prebiotic soup? Basically because to form an amino acid, you have to extract water. And that means that It's a dehydration process. You can't do it in the ocean, or if you drop it in the ocean, a process called hydrolysis will dissolve it. So what they're trying to do is add by subtraction. And there are many authorities that say that. I got a $100 book in the desk here about microbiology, and it goes into great detail on the formation of each of the amino acids and shows that, here it says, the individual subunits of the polymer chain contain 2 hydrogen atoms and 1 oxygen atom less than the simple monomers from which they synthesized. Synthesis of amino acids thus involves the release of water. I have a poem.
Okay.
Once there was a fossil lying in a bog. Along come apologist and said, hot dog, I'll be famous, I'll be known, speak in Paris, London, Rome. Thought this fossil in his race must have had an ape-like face. 15 million years ago, over glaciers and through snow, hunted mastodon and deer with a simple club and spear. Spoke in grunts and growls, that's so. Couldn't say a word, you know. Hairy back, hairy legs, lived on nuts and roots and eggs. Just a jawbone and a tooth tells me all this ancient truth. And since my given name is Gus, we'll call him Gusianthropus.
Excellent.
Thank you.
I got to tell you, your wife had read a poem, too. Now, did you write these poems?
Yeah.
I have a reputation for writing really politically incorrect poems of a sarcastic nature.
I was looking for those. Are the poems on the Genesis site yours? They're very strong.
I'm not sure on the Genesis site. On proactivenews.com, those are mine.
Well, I was looking.
Words and poems say things so eloquently, and they say them in a way that, quite frankly, is there to stay. I don't know what there is about the rhyming and rhythm, but it definitely is a great addition in terms of learning things.
It's the most concentrated form of human expression is poetry. It's crystallized, the thoughts, right?
Concentrated. What did you say?
Form of human expression.
That's. I know. I was just playing the idiot.
I got another one here. 4,000 million years ago, in a quiet sea, but the warm sun glow, a raindrop to a dust mote said, "So you can't think and I am dead. We've got to plan for what's ahead. There's just no future being slime. Improve ourselves. We have the time. You be a fish, swim to and fro. I'll be a bird, just watch me go. Though you can't think and I have no eyes, we'll accidentally organize into an ape, and then a man. We'll do it all without a plan. Do you find this hard to conceive? Don't reason on it, just believe. Ignore the facts, be scientific. Believe in things that aren't specific. It's taught in every institution, this religion they call evolution."
Most excellent. I hope you email those to me, and I'd like to, if you got a website link on those too, I'd definitely link up. I'd be happy to do a link from my poetry section called Time for a Rhyme, and I really do appreciate poetry.
Well, thank you. That's what I was looking for, Time for a Rhyme. I wasn't able to bring it up.
Okay.
I had an interesting conversation about 20 years ago with a fellow who was one of the justices in the Georgia Superior Court, and his name is Braswell Dean, and he was a Methodist evolutionist when we started out. About 2 months later, he believed in creation, and Braswell Dean lectured all over this country on creation evolution. And he had a good friend, being in the legal side of the profession. He became the Chief Justice of the Georgia Superior Court. A beautiful man. W.R. Byrd. And Byrd was a traditional religious person, and I'm not sure whether he believed in creation or not, but he wrote, as a result of his conversation with Braswell, 2 volumes called The Origin of the Species Revisited. And he takes Darwin apart with a shredder, and all he uses is evidence. There's 5,000 footnotes, and anyone who's serious about getting rid of this godless doctrine should get a hold of those books. Origin of the Species Revisited by W.R. Byrd.
Now, it's fascinating because you made the point in the link much earlier in the show about the fact that it takes faith, that it's a religion. And I have run into members of cults that are so fallacious in terms of what they're based on, so absolutely insubstantial. And yet these people are so adamant about their beliefs. Well, I just know because I believe. And I'm always saying, oh, you're right. Let's not let truth or facts or fiduciary evidence enter the situation at all. And they usually get steamed. And I think that's what this is, too. Again, people want to be master of their own destiny. And certainly the devil thought that wasn't too bad an idea. And we're born into sin, and it's our nature to gravitate towards that apart from God's loving hand touching our lives.
Man, if your daddy was a monkey, you're off the hook. Who can hold you responsible for anything, man? Let's go to the party.
Yeah, and anybody who thinks their daddy was a monkey,
away, right?
Yeah, anybody who thinks their dad's a monkey is clearly bananas. Well,
here's one other point.
Please.
We're talking about theistic evolution. Now, the Bible presents creation clearly and simply. It says, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. And it goes through a progressive 6 days of creation and a day of rest. Now, the interesting thing is that the seventh day is not spoken of as being blessed. He blessed all of the other days, but the seventh day was still continuing in Paul's time. In Hebrews chapter 3 and 4, Paul discusses the seventh day, and he says there remains a Sabbath rest for the children of God. And so this shows that the creative days were longer than 24 hours. Now you notice how the plan for our salvation through Jesus Christ has taken thousands of years to develop. He was foretold in Eden, Genesis 3:15. He was promised through all the prophets in the Hebrew Scriptures. He came to his people. He was put to death and sacrificed for our sins. And he's promised to come again. While this has taken time, God wasn't in a hurry. In the meantime, what's been shown is man can't do without God. Everything we try doesn't work. Okay, it was instantaneous. Pow, there's the earth. Zam, there's the heavens. Zoop, there's the animals. You see? And the 6 day, 24 hours does not fit with the evidence we have in geology or with the description of the seventh day is still continuing in Hebrews chapter 3 and 4. So the Bible shows us that actually the word yom, which was used for day, is sometimes in the Bible refers to 1,000 years. The Bible says a day with the Lord is 1,000 years in one place, and 1,000 years is as a night when it's past. And the fact that the seventh day still continued 4,000 years later and still continuing to now and will only end when Christ has accomplished his work and redeemed the human race shows that God wasn't in a hurry in creating things, which makes it very easy for us to understand the existence of gigantic species such as the dinosaurs in ages past. But notice they are passed off the scene. And the question sometimes is raised, well, what happened to dinosaurs? And the answer is, well, too big to get in the ark. But now, if you had an Ultrasaurus as a pet, he's 100 feet long, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he weighs more than your house. And he likes your kids, and he wags his tail, to take out your house. The scale of those gigantic beasts was not in keeping with the scale of humans. And so there were periodic extinctions, which we find in geology. And so between Genesis 1 and 2, we find that when the second account of creation is given, which is in more detail, that God was creating new animals and bringing them to Adam, and Adam would name them. That's an interesting point, isn't it? So
it is.
We're saying that creation took a long period of time. There have been other forms of life that have existed. The Bible agrees with geology and paleontology. It just doesn't agree with the theory that violates science.
and yet, creation is scientific, and that's what most people don't understand.
Mm-hmm.
It's very scientific. Quite frankly, when you look at whether or not we're talking about the miracle of the human eye, the beauty of a child's hand, how all these things have come together, I mean, mankind and his ability to adapt his environment around him is clearly the advantage that we have in addition to the brains over other species.
We're
and
the
yet
image of God.
somehow, why would we have evolved into that? Where are the genetic throwbacks, which they claim, we should see some sort of throwback to the intermediary species, which we don't. I mean, you take somebody with rickets, and all of a sudden we have Peking man. I think that there is interesting things both in terms of worldwide mythos and in terms of the Bible that talks very clearly about the fact that mankind may have had their bloodline polluted. Now, you may have some evolutionists out there thinking, well, no, we're talking evolution here, dudes. No, we're talking mutation. We're talking the dilation of the blood of mankind. That has nothing to do with evolution, does it, Don?
Well, you're precisely correct. It is a very succinct, few verses on this, but direct explanation of what happened before the flood and what the source is of the demonic influence that's over the earth. In Genesis chapter 6, we read, "It came to pass that when men began to multiply in the face of the ground and daughters were born to them, that the sons of God saw the daughters of men, that they were fair, and they took them wives of all they chose." Now, I use the American Standard Version, and I bought the last three they had in Zondervan's bookstore, and this one I've been using since 1957. I put this third cover on it, and it's my regular translation here. I love it. It's the first real American translation. It's very accurate and uses God's name also. So verse 3 says, "And Jehovah said, My spirit shall not strive with man forever, and that he also is flesh. Yet his days shall be 120 years. Now the Nephilim," King James says giants, "were in the earth in those days, and also after that, when the sons of God came in unto the daughters of men, and they bare children to them. The same were the mighty men that were of old, the men of renown." There are many legends in mythology about God's coming to the earth, and I think there's great reason to believe that they derive from the fact that actually spirits, created spirits, angels, came to the earth because they saw that the humans had a pleasure they did not enjoy. They don't have hormones, but they came down to enjoy sex. And remember, angels have the power to materialize human bodies. When Jesus, when Mary, the two Marys went to the tomb after Jesus had been put in it, and this in the first day of the week, why, there was two angels there, or an angel rather, one angel, and told them, "Why do you seek the dead among the living?" Well, many times, we find in the case of Joshua, the prince of the army of Jehovah came out, and Joshua said, "Are you with us or against us?" He said, "Draw your shoes off. This place is holy." He says, "I come as prince of the armies of Jehovah." And so here was an angel that came to lead Joshua and the nation of Israel in their conquest of the promised land. So they were employing a faculty that they possessed as angelic spirits that these angels used wrong before the flood. They went to Kansas City, got some crazy little women there. Why would they come to the earth? Obviously, the human condition is a beautiful one. Most religion is about dying and flying, die and go to heaven. Yet Jesus said, "Blessed are the meek, they shall inherit the earth." And the Bible says, again, the earth should be full of the knowledge of the Lord as the waters cover the sea. So the human condition was holy as God created Adam and his wife. And if they had been faithful, the human race would be perfect. And there's something we don't have. We don't have the ability to see God, so we have to operate in faith. But we have something, too. We have each other. Male and female created he them. The angels saw the beauty in the relationship that men and women have and wanted to participate, but they didn't have the right to do it. So the flood came, and they were destroyed. Not they were destroyed, but rather they had to returned to their spirit state, and their sons were destroyed. And we go to the book of Jude, and you referred to this, and I'm glad you know this. This is very deep and very, very important scripture, or scriptural idea. In the book of Jude, if I find it, left-handed.
I think it's New Testament.
Yeah, it's the last book before Revelation here. The angels that kept not their own principality, some translations say original estate, but left their proper habitation, the spirit realm, he has kept in everlasting bonds under darkness unto the judgment of the great day. As Sodom and Gomorrah and the cities about them, having in like manner with these, how is Sodom and Gomorrah like the angels? Well, they were going after men. They didn't have any business.
And I think that when we check into the fallen angels, we'll find the origins of bestiality as well as homosexuality. But the music's playing, break's going to get us, so we better get there right now. By the way, folks, I'm planning on having Don back again, and I'll spring it on him on the air. This way, you got to say not just no to me, but to the better part of a million folks, Don. Unless you'd like to come back, and then you're welcome to. I sure want to have you back on and talk about this and related subject matter. The reason I'm mentioning that is I don't know whether or not you want to answer any questions, whether or not you want to
answer questions.
Oh, okay, great, because we've had some callers saying, are you going to open the phone lines?
I would like to finish on this scripture in Jude that you referred to, though. If I may,
absolutely.
Please.
I think it's imperative because I could see where the bones of giants could be misconstrued again as some part in the evolutionary process.
Okay. Now, this in 6 and 7 shows that the sins of the angels, which is only described in Genesis 6, is the same as homosexuality, which means unlawful sex. I'll read it from the beginning. The angels, they kept not their own principality, but left their proper habitation. He has kept in everlasting bonds under darkness unto the judgment of the great day. Their darkness was they were cut out of God's organization and no longer permitted to be in his light. However, they had activity because we read in Matthew chapter 8 about Jesus casting out demons and about the demons that got into swine and they plunged over the cliff. And 2 Corinthians 4:4 says the devil is the god of this world. He offered Jesus all the kingdoms. They're his. Okay. Even as Sodom and Gomorrah and the cities about them, having in like manner with these given themselves over to fornication and gone after strange flesh, are set before as an example, suffering the punishment of eternal fire. So Sodom and Gomorrah sinned the same way the angels did, and that was when the book of Peter says the patience of God was waiting in Noah's day. Okay, let's do the questions if you wish.
Okay, well, actually, before I get to the questions, I had a thought of my own, and that is that I do find it rather interesting how much in terms of TV that we see TV and Hollywood, or Holywood, however you want to...
Hollywood, I like that.
Yeah. They are really adamant about promoting evolution, and they do it in really interesting ways. One gentleman I talked to off the air mentioned that, he said, what about Harry and the Hendersons? I don't have a problem with Bigfoot, folks. Well, actually, I haven't run into one, so clearly I don't have a problem, but is there an intermediary species in man's evolution? Absolutely not. What we would be seeing there is a genetic anomaly or potential mutation that might be Rephaim. Correct me if I'm wrong, Don.
Well, I believe that the survivors of the flood, which were Noah, 8 souls, the book of Peter says, were saved in the ark. Noah and his wife and his sons, 3, and their wives. They were all righteous, and they were uncontaminated with demonic blood. So the human race today, which God loved and gave his son for, isn't contaminated in its blood. And thus, the Bible says, Jesus on the stake said, forgive them, they know not what they do. God has extended salvation to anyone who will believe, and he would hardly do that to a demon's descendant.
Agreed. Okay. And also, I was asked, do you think PBS will put out an apology for its recent special on Lucy? I'd say slim porn, none. Do you think they'll ever come around to this, or will their coming around be contingent upon our acceptance of E.T. as God?
Well, I don't believe they're going to get off of it. They have too much investment in it. I mean, it's like people in a political position that they know doesn't work still adhere to it. In Russia, you still got communists, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so there is an enormous industry that thrives on this education stuff. You realize how it paralyzes our educational institutions to spend all this time talking about a myth? But, guys sit around in the fraternities and they talk about this when they should be discussing how God created us, what our opportunities are. Suppose you believe in evolution by hook, line, and sinker, and you really believe that we're the result of chance formation of molecules under cosmic rays, etc. When you die, you're out of it. And the Bible teaches that God's going to give us life and that more abundantly. So you have eternal life as opposed to nothing. It's a bad bet.
It sure is. And yet, people would rather gamble with that. And as far as a nothingness, that's that's a topic for a whole other show. Again, the phone number, folks, is 1-800-259-9231, 1-800-259-9231. Let's get to our first caller from the great state of Mississippi. It's Jay. Good evening, Jay.
Hey, how you doing?
Fine, Jay.
Hey, how you doing?
I live in Atlanta.
Have you ever heard of a man named Ken Hovind? Ken Hovind, he's from Pensacola, Florida. He studied about evolution and creationism and the New World Order. He has a video out, and he brings a lot of good information on the dinosaurs and how there's still the natives over in some parts of Africa. I forget where it was. A big black river. The natives see it stick its head out in the night, and it's called Nahapakunde or something like that. Have you ever heard of it?
No.
Well, anyways, that destroys all the evolution, with Darwinism and all the isms.
Well, it's kind of my thought, if you don't mind my butting in here, or I'm trying to button something up, not like the rear end thing, Al Gore style. I think that when we check the past of this Earth, we're going to find there were tremendously higher levels of oxygen, and it's quite possible that those levels of oxygen would have led to larger members of the species, not evolutionary descendants down the old Darwinian chain, but we're just talking, folks, the growth factors would be dynamically increased through oxygen. Have you ever done any thoughts at all on that, Don?
Yeah, if you increase the oxygen, you burn up the forest.
It's a known fact, too. You can take
we have a perfectly
oxygen
balanced atmosphere, and if you raise the oxygen level, the process of oxidation is accelerated. I lived in Houston when 3 of the astronauts were burned up in a space capsule, and they couldn't get out in time. And they had a high oxygen content in those capsules. If you wore hair oil, it would ignite. So what's my point? There's been conversation about higher levels of oxygen in antiquity. It is possible, but it could not have been enormously higher. I believe they were simply larger creations of God.
Well, I think I agree. I brought that up, though, because I always get that call when I talk about evolution. My ex-brother-in-law was on a nuclear submarine, and they had to be very careful about their dietary intake. Okay, it's the end of the week, it's getting late. The dietary intake that they were indulging in, because, quite frankly, human gas at some of the depths they were diving to, given the content of the atmosphere, was flammable and could literally explode.
Methane.
Methane,
You're right.
yes.
You're talking about methane.
So, anyways, and I know that in some of the legends of fire-breathing lizards and things like that, I believe it was the exhalation of their of their body that very likely, simply because of a higher, not supremely high, but a higher oxygen atmosphere that would account for the mythos of fire-breathing dragons as well.
You don't mind if I don't go there, do you?
No, that's okay. I'm kind of curious why the same thing doesn't happen with most politicians in Washington. Jay, are you still with us?
Yeah.
Did
Hey,
you have
can you hear
another
me?
question?
Hello.
Yes, sir.
Okay, all I wanted to, I don't want to hold up the lines any longer. I wanted to, someday, God willing, try to get you together with Gail Rippenlinger or Tex Mars and do a special show, but I'll talk about it later next time I call.
You know what? I had the chance to go through Gail's book before it even hit the market.
What's the name of his book?
New Age Bible Versions. By the way, your American Standard that you have there, that old American Standard, I have a buddy who is an expert on hermeneutics, and he told me that the old American Standard, the original translations, well, I mean, as if there's any original translation, but the first American Standard translations were among the best that were done into the English language.
Well, I agree with that.
So I just, that's my buddy Greg Pappas, folks, for those of you who are curious about who I was talking about. Greg
Thanks for saying that.
Okay, and the check's in the mail, right? It's anyways, folks, again, 1-800-259-9231, 1-800-259-9231. Now, in terms of ET, there is a common message that channelers are putting out now that is evolutionary in its impact, and that pretty much know ye not, ye are all gods, and that is something that a lot of the New Age community believes, that if we're not doing it in terms of physicality, mentally we're evolving into gods. And
that was the first lie.
Yeah, that was I was going to say that was kind of the one that Eve took a bite out of Eve, or Eve took a bite out of.
That's precisely correct. Okay, now that's satanic. I'm reading it now. Now the serpent was more subtle than any beast of the field that Jehovah God had made. And he said unto the woman, Yea, hath God said, You shall not eat of any tree of the garden? And the woman said to the serpent, Of the fruit of the trees of the garden we may be eat. But of the fruit of the tree which is in the midst of the garden, God has said, Ye shall not eat of it, neither shall ye touch it, lest ye die. And the serpent said unto the woman, two lies, You shall not surely die. For God does know that in the day you eat thereof, then your eyes shall be opened, and ye shall be as God. Frank Sinatra said, I did it my way. That's how he sang it, right? Okay. The knowledge of good and evil was, I'll decide what's good and bad. That was rebellion. Humans exempted themselves from God's restrictions. Jehovah only said, don't eat of the tree, and they said, who are you telling us what to do? God will do whatever we want around here. We eat of this, do anything else we want. And he says, okay, go ahead, see what happens. Put him out of the garden. Oh, by the way, you die.
Yeah, no bueno.
You shall be as God, right?
Yeah. Well,
that's New Age.
Yeah, well, in the New Age is the same old thing. Let's get to our next... Oh, I'm sorry. Let's get to our next caller from California. It's Mike. Good evening, Mike.
Yeah, hello.
Hi, Mike.
You there? Yes, hello there. Yeah, I've been listening to the program tonight. It's very interesting. I just wanted to comment about the atheist agenda of California. I'm from California. I've been listening to this program. I believe in the views of the anti-California, if you know what I mean. But,
and I'm not trying to be nasty towards Californians. I just, I like to say, what they say up here in Montana is California is a good place to be from.
Yes, I know what you're talking about.
I like to go to it personally. We don't have an ocean here in Georgia that's close to me. Go ahead, California.
Believes in those views that are stereotypical of California, and I'm one of those people. And, I just wanted to comment. I wanted to ask the guests there, what do you believe, or what is your comment on the things that California teaches to the young people here It's very anti-religious. It's very evolutionary. You know, if you think about, or if you comment about Genesis and, you know, Exodus and all that, there's something wrong with you. You know what I mean? I just want to know what the guest thinks about that.
Well, I am not familiar with the California school systems and their teachings. Personally, I don't want someone teaching religion to my children in school. I'll do that. I think that's my responsibility.
Yes, okay, yeah, I see your point there, but I'm just saying that even in the Catholic or Christian schools in California, I know personally, I was in the Catholic school system in California. They teach evolution in the Catholic school, but they do teach creation, of course, because it is a Catholic school. But they tell you, you know, that this is the religious point of view. But they try to. My impression of it was that they try to push that the evolution was the truth. You know what I'm talking about? I wonder if you have...
Okay. Well, I think that, frankly, that's the way it's all going to go. I think in a private school, it's really a darn shame when it's a private school that is religious-based, and we're not just going to pick on the Catholics here. Quite frankly, the Protestants are right in there on this, too. I think that they should stand up and say, we don't want the government dictating the agenda of our religious beliefs. But unfortunately, too many people do allow that to happen. Anyways, so I think it's way bad news, and it's an invasion. It's an invasion of policy, and certainly, at the least and at the most, it's an invasion of somebody's belief system that, quite frankly, should not be allowed to be breached. Anyways, we've got a whole board of callers here. I'd like to get to the next one. Thanks for your call, Mike. Let's go to Michael from Oklahoma. Hello, Michael.
Good evening. How are you?
Alive and well.
Good. I'll try to make this quick because I know you're running out of time. But I've wondered about something, and maybe you can answer it. If you go with the theory of creationism, okay?
Okay.
Well, we've often seen these, and supposedly we have been on this earth about 6,000 years, full years.
Well, now, we've kind of refuted that assumption already, and I don't buy into the...
I accept 6,000 years.
Okay. But let's say that we've been...
That's my point of view. Bible chronology points to that.
What, 6,000 years? Or...
Yes. Adam was created in 4026 B.C., and we've come since then 2,000 years, so it's about 6,025 years.
Okay. I'll go with that.
If,
but we are shown these pictures of supposedly our early ancestors, the cavemen. Well, I've often wondered, when you go to the time of Noah and the generations after him, we're talking people that lived to be almost 1,000 years of age. You know, Noah was, over 900? Methuselah, almost 1,000. I mean, and all his descendants lived, several hundred plus years. Well, wouldn't those that they depict to us either have had to have been our ancestors? I mean, at the ripe old age, you might say.
Well, how would you like to live forever on earth?
That would be wonderful.
See, if Adam hadn't sinned, you'd have that hope.
As long as I don't have to look like that when I get killed.
All right. Well, no, God created the human race for the earth. The scriptures teach that. He says, heaven is my throne, the earth is my footstool, Isaiah 60, verse 66, 1. 60, verse 12 says, I'll make the place of my feet glorious. So the Bible says the wolf shall dwell with the lamb, the leopard shall lie down with the kid, the calf, the young lion, the fatling together, and the little child shall lead them.